Are we live?
I
We're
think
live.
we are. We're live.
All right. Hey, people. I'm Charlotte. I'm from PledgeMe, and this is my first ever live. Hopefully, we are live. It tells us that we are. So, welcome. Today, our subject is how to inspire your crowd to pledge to your campaign. And at any time, if you have any questions or comments, just pop them in the comments section below, and we're going to be talking for maybe 20 to 30 minutes. So just to introduce myself, I am Charlotte Squire, and I've been working for PledgeMe for a bit over a year as a projects and marketing lead. And I am streaming into you from Takaka Golden Bay, which is up the very northwest tip of the South Island, where the sort of Kiwi beak is. That's Farewell Spit. And I've been working remotely from Golden Bay for quite a long time. And the last few years, well, not last few years, with PledgeMe, learning a lot about crowdfunding. And so I came in having watched and admired PledgeMe for a long time. And one of the cool things about that was I came in as a complete beginner, newbie. So I know what it's like to be a newbie when it comes to crowdfunding. And so I'm going to put that down as like one of my superpowers, knowing what it is to be a newbie. And with us, we have Anna Guenther, PledgeMe's co-founder. Hey, Anna.
Kia ora. Yep. I am PledgeMe's co-founder, currently supporting with some equity campaigns, and just have 12 years of knowledge of what works and what doesn't in the crowdfunding space. So really excited today to talk about how to inspire your crowd and give some ideas, as well as hearing what Charlotte brings to the table with her newbie lens.
So we have one person watching, which is awesome. Hey there. Anna, are we able to see comments come in through this?
Yeah. So if you're watching and you have a question, a comment, and if you want to like it, just do whatever you'd like. We're here to answer your questions as well as talk generally.
Awesome. Okay, so with our subject today, which is how to inspire your crowd to pledge to your campaign, we're going to break that down into some questions that Anna and I are going to kind of riff on. And the first thing that I wanted to bring to the table with this subject is we talk about how to inspire your crowd to pledge. It's what do we mean by a crowd? So crowd is I don't know if it's specific to PledgeMe, but it's a term that I had to get my head around. Anna, is that a PledgeMe term? Or is it a crowdfunding term? What do we mean by crowd?
It's a crowdfunding term, but I mean, it's really wider than that, right? Like, it's your audience. It's the people that care about what you're doing. It's people that are going to participate in what you do. So our word in crowdfunding is crowd. But yeah, it is really what you have to think of anytime you're doing a project, right? Like, who are the people that are going to engage with it and what do they want?
Yeah, so that is a word that for those of you who do end up crowdfunding with us, we'll use that word quite a lot. And I would throw into the mix, we're talking about your friends and your family and your community, maybe your customers and clients if you're more a business. So it's people, you generally would have it's someone you have a connection with, right, Anna? Would be in your crowd?
Yeah, it's your fans. It's the people that care about what you're doing, whatever the relationship to what you're doing is. And often when we talk about it as well, we talk about your first 50, like who are the 50 people, like literally the 50 people that you think will be excited about what you're doing, and write those names down and then start talking to them. Like, that's your close crowd. That's the first part of your crowd. But it can be so much bigger than people you know, right?
That's such a good point. Yeah, the first 50 is something that I've seen coming up a lot in PledgeMe. And that's a really cool thing for even people coming in for the first time to brainstorm. The first 50 people you'd go out to, they would be your crowd. And it's something that a lot of people would never even consider until they got into crowdfunding.
Yeah, but it's actually a lot of fun to do. I know when we did our first equity campaign, we just had the team sitting around the table with some beers and pizza, thinking about who was in our first 50 and writing those names down. And then people got offended when they didn't hear from us. They're like, weren't we in your first 50? Like, what happened? Why didn't we know this was coming? And I was like, oh gosh, sorry. But yeah, thinking about that, who is your crowd is really important when you're thinking about inspiring them, right? Because we don't know who they are. How are you going to know what they like?
Super important question. And even some people, for me, working more with projects, don't really think about who their crowd are. So, and speaking of preparing our crowd, that was going to be the next thing I wanted to talk about. For me, one of the really important things to do before you begin a crowdfunding campaign is to, even before you publish your crowdfunding campaign, you start to prepare your crowd and let them know there's something coming, right? There's a crowdfunding campaign coming.
Totally. That's part of the inspiration process. Like they know something's coming and they're ready when it launches. And so that can be as simple as popping some stuff on your personal social media through to popping it on, specific social media that maybe you created for this project that you're doing or this business that you're doing. But yeah, it's making sure they know it's coming and doing that in interesting and different ways. We've seen people do things like putting up posters around town to say that this is coming and that people should pledge, through to just social media posts. When we did our first equity campaign, I literally just posted a picture of a dog eating dog food, because in tech world, when you use your own product, you call it eating your own dog food. And so us equity crowdfunding was us eating our own dog food. And I was like, hi people, like we're about to do it. What do you think? Would you be interested? And got a lot of likes on Facebook, but also lots of comments from people being like, yeah, really interested to learn more. And that was sort of the start to the inspiration process, right? Like it was just getting them knowing what was coming before it went live. But we've seen all sorts.
That's so cool. So you're talking about, even for you, it's PledgeMe, which must have been kind of a scary thing to be, walking your talk as a crowdfunding platform, to be opening, putting that idea out to your crowd and then asking for feedback, which I know for me that could be incredibly valuable, but kind of scary as well. You're going to get positive and negative feedback, but all really useful feedback before you even begin, right?
Totally. And I think all of it's useful, right? Like the positive and the questions, because you want to know what people are thinking about and what they need to know in order to decide. We don't often see negative, because people are kind, but there are questions, and that's really good to know as well, so you know what to address.
And did that initial feedback, in your experience, did it reshape your campaign, the way you were pitching?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that happened when we were getting ready to launch our first equity campaign was we created a pitch video and then we shared it with our board, and the board came back and they were like, not great. Like people will pledge, but the feedback was you could make it more inspiring and more, part of the reason it wasn't inspiring is we had tried to do something very complicated, talking to camera sort of video, which didn't land super well. But getting that feedback meant we could go back to basics and make a video that really just talked to what we were doing and why, and what people would get in return. And we had people tell us that that's one of the reasons they pledged. Like the video was just really clear and really well done. The second version of it. So, it can be really good to connect with your crowd early and get feedback, because it can change what you end up doing with your campaign.
Awesome. If anyone is just joining us, I can see we have one person, but people will watch this after. We're talking about ways to inspire your crowd to pledge to your campaign. And if you do come in after, feel free to ping us any questions. So Anna, one of the things you talked about was making your video more simple. And that brings me to the subject of making sure your campaign page content is super clear and really visual. I am more a writer. And I find for me, I'm always going to be looking at, whether I can go straight to a campaign page and understand in the first couple of paragraphs what you're campaigning for. Why are you crowdfunding? I want to know straight away. I don't want to have to work hard to find that information. How about you?
Totally. I think keeping it simple, not simplistic, but like simple, like being able to say in a sentence what you're doing and why, and then what your pledgers get in return is important. And it's not just saying it, it's showing it. Like, how do you show people who you are, what you make, what you're doing to get them excited as well? So a really clear pitch is so important to inspire people, because they don't have time to go and read a bunch of information or dig too deep, at least at the start. Like you have to hook them first, right? And so how do you make it really clear at the start what you're doing?
And you mentioned before about simplifying one of your campaign videos, and that's something I often find myself saying. Videos can be super simple; they don't need to be flash, and you can just do it on your iPhone, right?
You could definitely just do it on your iPhone, and it doesn't even need to be you talking to camera. It can just be like, I think one of the craziest videos we had was one of the simplest, which was Yeasty Boys when they launched their campaign. They just had an animated short video that was the queen in a G-string chugging their beer. And people were like, oh, we're so offended by this. But like, it was just super simple. What were they raising money for? They said it was to go to the UK. And they did it in such an interesting way that people were sharing the video and quite shocked. But it said what it did on the can, right? Like they just were raising to go to the UK and launch their business over there.
Awesome. Yep. And the next question is going to be around planning. So I am such a planner now. For me, I do find that when people are coming in to do with me, I'm working at project level, but this applies to equity as well very much. I really encourage people to do heaps of planning, including planning in their video and all the visuals. But in terms of engaging with their crowd, I am nudging people to be planning to be in some way reaching out most days of their campaign, and that can take a bit of pre-planning. So for me, I'm going to be like, you might at the beginning of every week that your campaign's running, you might like brainstorm some ideas you want to share with your crowd, or if you're really going to be super organized, as I do encourage people to do. And we actually have a free template we can send people. It's a communications plan template. So reach out to us if you'd like that, because it's really detailed. And I'm suggesting that people are planning their socials and their newsletters and just anything, even sketching a rough plan before they even start, because when you're doing that campaign, you can be you can feel under a bit of pressure. You can be like, oh, here I am. What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I think inspiring your crowd definitely needs to be a little bit planned. A lot of it can be in the moment as well, but you need to know that you're going to be posting different things at different times. You could be, hit the halfway mark, and that's not planned, but you know that you're going to post something when that happens. So you're ready and you post a picture, or you post the team really excited, or you post different things. And I think having a bit of a plan around the different ways you keep people inspired and excited is really important, because you're thinking about it, right? You're thinking about what will inspire your crowd and what will make them see that you're moving towards your goal, and get them excited about that and want to be a part of it. So definitely having a bit of a plan going in can be really helpful to make sure you are constantly thinking about how to inspire your crowd and keep them connected.
Yeah, it's keeping it on their radar, right? I mean, I remember Niko Nero, which is quite a hard. It's a Maori and Japanese title, quite a hard one to say. So they were raising money for their cat adoption cafe in Lower Hutt. And what they were doing is at the beginning of every week, they were basically gathering up a whole bunch of photos of their gorgeous cats or kittens. And then they were using those to say, hey, we're crowdfunding and look how cute our cats are. If you'd like to pledge, here's how you can do it. So they were sort of telling the story of their amazing enterprise with their gorgeous, cute cats, which, who can resist that? And they have great engagement on socials. At the same time, they were reminding people they're crowdfunding. And when they first started their campaign, they had quite a lot of engagement. They have a really cool crowd, a lot of people, and then it slowed down. And they kept reminding people they were crowdfunding, and it was scary for them at one point. They were kind of open about that. It was like, is anyone listening? But they kept going, and so I think that's something for people to be mindful of when you're reaching out and reminding people you're crowdfunding throughout that 30 days, 45 days. People may, there's sometimes a lull mid campaign, when the pledging can slow down, and that's quite a normal thing, right? But all those comms you're putting out, they are keeping it on people's radars. And so if you can just keep going in whatever way is comfortable for you, right? It's not always going to be socials.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I've seen over time is like, not every post you make needs to be about your campaign when you're running your campaign. Like, you're going to post other things on your personal social media, on your professional social media, wherever you're posting. But always remember at the bottom to like have the PS, we're raising, here's the link, or crowdfunding, here's the link, just so people know that it is still happening and they can go to it. And always make sure to post your link when you are explicitly talking about the campaign. I've seen people forget to do that before, and it's hard for people to find. But yeah, that fear is so normal in the middle of a campaign, because what we see is people get in really quick at the start if there's things they want, or they're like really excited about it. And then even if they're really excited, sometimes people leave it to the end because they need a deadline. Like, just most of us do that, right? We wait until the last minute to do something that we mean to do. So we can see, someone's 80% of someone's goal will be pledged in the final day, because people are finally like, oh yeah, they mean to do that. Like, it's time now. So figuring out that middle bit and how to keep on reminding people what's happening is important, because if you don't do that, you won't get that deadline magic at the end as well. So really, yeah, thinking about that is important.
Mm. Yeah, that deadline magic, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's that final countdown, right? Maybe the last week and the lead up
Mm.
to the end of your campaign. So you can really milk that deadline. You can be like 7 days to go, 6 days to go. You could, there's often a bit of a buzz in that final week. Even if you have reached your minimum target. Some people go for stretch goals, and it can still be the crowd will often be more engaged in that final week, which is an opportunity.
Yeah. The stretch goal thing is really interesting as well, around inspiring your crowd, right? Like, I think
Mm.
that the recent Rat King landlord campaign showed
Yeah,
having really explicit stretch goals and saying, if we hit 7K, we'll do this. If we hit 10K, we'll do that. Can keep people engaged, because otherwise they're like, oh, you've made your goal, you're done. Like,
totally.
I might still want rewards, but I might not pledge because you don't really need me. But if you have those stretch
Mm,
goals going, people are like, oh, now I know how me pledging now not only gets me the reward I want, but gets you to that next level. Yeah.
mm.
So thinking about that is important.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, for those of you who do, campaign with us and reach your minimum goal beforehand, it's a neat thing to keep it in the back of your mind that you can do that. You can set sort of stretch goals, which are like mini goals. You might be able to inspire your crowd to help you reach just another level in your crowdfunding campaign. So, yeah, we're talking about ways to inspire your people to pledge to your campaign today. Um, and just wanting to go over, so it's about engagement, right? So I'm wanting to go over some of the ways that you might reach out to people to do that, and as well as digital. You can be reaching out via your socials, whatever they are, and you might have a newsletter list. We also have an updates tab on our campaign pages. But Anna, you were saying something about posters and more physical ways you can reach out as well.
Totally. I think it's thinking about different ways your crowd will find out about this. And some of it is online. We are online quite a lot, but that's not the only way we tell people about what we're up to. It's in person, chatting to your friends. It's organizing a launch event. It's organizing a closing event. It's thinking about posters, or putting things in your email signature. So every time you email someone, they're seeing that you're running a campaign right now. It's really thinking about all the different ways that you could get out there, online and offline. Even to the point, like, if you are like in a co-working space or somewhere, like putting up that you're doing this thing, or if you're raising money to do a community project, could you have an old school like thermometer in front of the community project, showing people where you're at with your campaign, and get people thinking about pledging by having the URL there, or
Nice.
QR code. We even had someone, I think I talked about this last week, who on the wall of their cafe wrote down every name of every pledger, so people could see
Yeah.
themselves in the campaign every time they came into that cafe,
Mm.
because they were thanked up on the wall. So yeah, thinking about different ways to keep it present for people.
I love that. I contributed to a local cafe here a while ago, and it wasn't a crowd. It was sort of a crowd supporting campaign. It wasn't actually about money, but it was about all of us contributing our skills to help this cafe thrive, which it is. And my name is on the wall, and I love that my name's on the wall. I think stuff
Yeah,
like that. There's another campaign. I think it was Three Sisters. They had Polaroids of all their people who pledged, or I don't know how they did that, how
amazing.
they did get Polaroids, but
Yeah.
yeah, having that, having my name on a wall, it means makes all the difference. And that kind of brings me to the subject of rewards, which is something I think you're really good at, Anna, as a way to inspire our crowd, to come on board, sort of getting really
Yeah,
creative with rewards. Some people, it takes a bit of time for them to get their heads around what rewards are and how they can really get our crowd excited.
totally. I think rewards are such a big thing in this, right? It's the inspiration that gets people wanting to be a part of it. Takes it beyond being a donation into a value exchange on the project side, but also on the equity side, it can make people that become shareholders feel more engaged with your company beyond having shares in it. So, like, some of my favorite rewards are everything from uh, oh, there's just so many. But like, one time we actually had someone say, for $1,000, it was like a metal band. They said, for $1,000, we will create a religion based around our pledger. And someone pledged that. So sorry for people that are quite religious, but they created this like thing to like celebrate that person that pledged to their campaign, which meant that they could record, I think it was their first album, Mangle and Gruff. And so, like it was just something really out there, but it was something that people talked about and they got quite excited about. Also, another campaign, Uncle Birdie's Botanarium, was a podcast. So podcast might not seem like the most exciting thing in the world, but it was a creative podcast and it had some very well-known names in there, like Jermaine Clement. And they said that if you pledge to the campaign, they invite you to a dinner. And at the dinner, you would be serenaded by their musician. They would have the artist who was doing all the podcast artwork, drawing pictures, and they would do all these really quirky things. And so people pledged to it because they're like, I want to go to that dinner. Like, I wouldn't get that anywhere else. Like, that's great. So like experiences can really inspire people. And you can add these rewards after your campaign is live. So it can be another reason to go out and update people and inspire them to pledge, because you're talking about these exciting things that they could get that they potentially wouldn't get anywhere else ever. So yeah, there's so many things you can offer people. And I think sometimes there's some really quirky things you can do to get people excited, but then there's literally just the thing that you're selling, right? Like, or the thing that you're making, a copy of your album or a piece of art or whatever it is that people feel really connected with and want.
Yeah, I've seen over the last year that pre-sales to events have been going really well. So entire events can be based around rewards. I've seen people pre-selling. The event did not exist until the people bought the tickets via the reward. And, what a cool way to do that. And if enough people don't buy those tickets, the event won't take place. So there's a buzz there. But I think, that's another pre-sales of tickets is a new way I've seen emerging several times. Well, not new, but it did really well in the last year or so. And I definitely encourage people to do it. And the other thing about rewards, what you mentioned, Anna, about it being a value exchange, because just recently, and I think it's probably it's something that people think about. When you crowdfund, you're going out and asking people for their funds, right? So how does it just, how do you frame that in a way that it's not like, please give us your money, but how do you, with a reward, it becomes more an exchange. And was that what you intended from the very beginning, that it was always going to be about an exchange? So it keeps the energy more balanced and it can be really positive and more celebratory that way.
Totally. Like, I think it's really important that people think this is an exchange. People want these rewards that we're creating. They're helping us make it, but they're getting something in return, apart from just feeling good because they've been the people to back us and help us make it happen. And, you never know what people are going to want. So I often recommend going out and asking people as well, like, hey, what would you want? Like, what would be really exciting for you? Because your crowd could give you that advice and like brainstorm with you and think of some really quirky things. One other one I really loved was it was a group that were creating a game. And it was a game based around grannies or nanas. And so they actually told people, hey, if you pledge a certain amount of money and send us a picture of your nana, she will be a part of the game. Like, she will be one of the cards in the card deck and immortalized forever in the game that we're making. Like, where else would you get that? Yeah. Like, I hope that people check their nanas before they pledge for that.
Yeah.
But,
with Nana's permission.
with Nana's permission. But like, it's just so cool because it's like, actually, they were going to need source photos anyways, right? To think about how they were going to create these characters. And by engaging their crowd around it and offering it as a reward, they managed to get the images that they needed, but also the money that they needed to make the game.
Love that.
By inspiring their crowd. So the inspiration process can actually create something new and different and better, like different nanas in your game.
Awesome. The other thing I wanted to talk about was media. It's another way to generate a little bit of buzz around your campaign. And sometimes we say crowdfunding campaigns can be like big marketing campaigns, because often when when you're putting your project or campaign out there, it's going to attract some attention from places we don't expect. And a lot of people get media attention during their crowdfunding campaigns as a way to attract more pledges. Although I want to add, in my experience, it's better to be partway into your campaign before you go to the media, because it gives it credibility. So I would say, for me, I've been saying as a rule of thumb, maybe like 50% funded, because then they'll start taking your campaign seriously. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that's a good point to leverage it, right? You've got your close crowd on board, they've engaged, they're
Mm.
pledging, you get media on board so it can go wider. And then it
Mm.
can, support that sort of inspiration of people that don't know you yet. But really,
Mm.
back to the point of knowing who your crowd is, you need to inspire your crowd first, like the people that already know you, and then go beyond that and use different channels like media to try and get out of it further.
Great. Well, I think that that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Is there anything else you can think of?
Yeah. I think just the one thing to think about is everyone is so busy and there's so many things happening in the world. So really inspiring your crowd is the whole point of doing a crowdfunding campaign, right? You want them to be inspired. You want this to be unique and different and exciting. So when you're creating a campaign, think about how you can make it exciting. Like don't make it a grant application. This is not a grant application that you're filling out in triplicate and checking all the boxes and talking about the sectors and all of that, like boring. Uh, no offense to grants. But like how do you make it about the people and how do you make it exciting and different and interesting, without promising the world? But this is your chance to really like be a bit different and do things with your crowd. So really think about that when you're creating your campaign. Think about how to make it exciting and be authentic in yourself rather than, you know, filling out lots of documents.
I love that. Being authentic and being yourself. That's for me a big part of PledgeMe's sort of ethos. It's not about the brand. It's not about putting a logo out in front of a crowd and saying,
Mm.
support what we're doing. It's about putting the humans behind the project, standing up for your project and
Yes.
explaining who you are and why you're doing this, your why behind
Yeah.
it. People will pledge for humans, right? To support humans.
People pledge to people.
Yeah.
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 So how do you make sure when you're inspiring a crowd that people are really there? People know
Awesome.
who's behind it and you're sharing it. Yeah. Agree.
I think that is a very good note to close on. So thank you so much for being with us, or if you're watching this video down the track, thanks for checking this out. You can always reach out to us, contact@pledgeme.co.nz for a chat. If you're thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign, we do mostly, it's project and equity these days. So we'd love to hear from you and just ping us with any questions if some have come up as a result of this. Yeah, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.